Well, hello, everybody. My name is Ian Shanahan. I'm representing the Ontario Field Ornithologists, OFO, and it is my pleasure to present your presenters today, Tony Beck and Nina Stavlund of Always an Adventure, their own ecotourism company. It is always an adventure when you're out with Tony and Nina. I've had the pleasure of being out numerous times in various settings with them, and I've always learned a lot and always enjoyed it along the way. Today, they're going to be speaking on the finer points of photography and how it relates to birds on the Niagara. Take it away, Tony and Nina.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. And thanks, Marcy and Jay. Special thank you to OFO for offering us this opportunity. So let's get right into it here. Niagara is a gold mine for photographers, with the falls, the nightlife, the colors, the symmetry of the vineyards and the orchards. The scenery is world class. So it's situated on the border with the US between Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. The area is well developed for tourism. More importantly, the river, the falls, the gorges, and the green space have a tendency to attract a lot of birds. Some of these birds are very difficult to find elsewhere in the country. Carolinian species like northern mockingbird, tufted titmouse, Carolina wren, they're all fairly regular here. But the area is best known for its gulls, especially in winter and during migration. Gull aficionados will enjoy comparing unusual species to the more common ones, like this lesser blackback gull here with herring gulls and a great blackback gull. But it's also good to check some of the more common migrants that come through, like Bonaparte's gulls, because mixed in there, you might find something unusual like a black-headed gull. Certainly little gull is quite regularly seen with the Bonapartes in the Niagara region. And of course, if you're lucky, you might see a marauding Jaeger chasing these various gulls. And the ultimate is getting that mega rarity, something like an ivory gull, or maybe even a Ross's gull tucked away somewhere in the region. Now, I might have to say right here is that some of the photos in this presentation were not taken in the Niagara region. However, the images are of species that are representative of potentials in the area. So pretty much any camera can take photos of wildlife, but some cameras are better than others. These bridge cameras, these compact models, are very popular with birders, but they're very limited in what you can capture. They do manage to magnify the image quite successfully, but because they have small sensors, it's very difficult to get professional quality images. What is recommended is something in the 400 or 500 millimeter range, a lens attached to a camera that has a larger sensor. The camera lens combination that you see in this image is my current go-to for wildlife photography. It's a 500 millimeter PF Nikkor lens, and it's attached to a Nikon D850, which has a full frame sensor. And that way I'm able to get really sharp, nice colors and lots of detail. Now, some photographers find it easier with their equipment supported on a sturdy tripod with a flexible, maneuverable tripod head like this Yalango gimbal head. But the problem with a tripod is that it can slow you down. For animals that are moving around quite a bit, active animals, birds in flight, a tripod will prevent you from responding to these dynamic situations. A monopod can help you support your camera without as much restriction as a tripod. Not quite as good as a tripod for keeping things steady, but it does offer some support, especially when you've got something like a joystick head, as you see here, gives you a lot of flexibility to move with subjects as they're going through the frame. Now, for birds in flight, I prefer to hand hold my camera, and that is without any support of any kind, just my body as the support. Now, the problem here is that it's difficult to keep the camera steady without some sturdy support, and your images might tend to go soft because there's that lack of support. So the techniques to use to get around this is mainly by having a fast shutter speed, something in the range of 1/1000th of a second or faster will freeze the action and help prevent any blurriness. Now, another technique is to pan with your subject. Panning with your subject is basically synchronizing your movement with the movement of the subject and following it through the frame. And that will help you with getting sharper images. If your lens or even your camera has vibration reduction, image stabilization, activate it, especially if you can't get those fast shutter speeds. Now, if you're using automatic cameras and you're not sure how to get that fast shutter speed, many automatic cameras have the sports mode or the action mode. That's the little running man icon. So that defaults to as fast a shutter speed as possible. Now, Niagara is considered the gull capital of the world. In late fall and winter, the region can attract upwards of 19 gull species, so more than anywhere else in the world. So in spring and summer, you might get birds in breeding plumage. Some gulls like this Franklin's gull here may even show a pinkish cast to the white plumes. This is the carotene in their diet, believed to be from crustaceans in their diet. In late summer, early fall, into early winter, you may attract some interesting juvenile plumages, like a lesser blackback gull coming down from Greenland or possibly even Baffin Island. So it's good to get those unusual plumages. Birds that are potentially in the area throughout the year, like Bonaparte's gull, you might even have a few non-breeders there in the summertime. It's good to study them and get all the different plumages. Here, this bird almost in 100% breeding plumage, photographed in May. Juvenile plumages, like in August or September. Or winter plumages, this one an adult in winter plumage. So many different plumages of the individual species at any given time of year. Now, the Niagara region also tends to attract some of the northern gulls, the white-winged gulls, like this first-year glaucous gull. And they come down mainly in the fall, and some will even spend the winter there. Now, the thing with a lot of the gulls, not just the northern ones, but a lot of them have very, very bright plumage. Here's an adult breeding plumaged glaucous gull, very, very brightly plumaged. Plumages like this reflect a lot of light. So it's easy to overexpose them, especially if you're using an automatic exposure. So it's best to interpret the light and adjust your exposure accordingly. If you're using an automatic exposure, you can do this with exposure compensation. Now, I prefer to use manual exposure. And when I photograph birds like glaucous gull, I try to underexpose just a little bit and then brighten it in the photo editing process. But still on unusual plumages, it's good to get that detail there so that you can study the plumages later on, or as a verification of the species that you've observed. Birds like Thayer's gull, you can try to get some good photos of plumages like this one in breeding plumage, photographed up in the Canadian Arctic, but it shows that the primaries, the diagnostic primary pattern there, and in this case, the dark eye. But even they can be easy to overexpose if you're not careful with your exposure. Now, getting close to some of the birds is advantageous, so you can fill the frame, but please be careful with rarities because you don't want to flush the bird. The best way to approach wildlife for a good photo is to move very, very slowly, extremely slowly, to behave in a non-predatory manner, is to kind of pretend like you're not interested in the bird. And it does require some patience. And in doing so, sometimes you can get very close. And if the bird is down low, it's good to get down to the same level as your subject. Photographing birds in flight with seabirds, which includes the gulls, I like to photograph the complete upper body. And the best way to do this is when the bird flies as it's banking, and then that way you get the full upper side. And this juvenile black-legged kittiwake here showing its distinctive, beautiful upper side, the pattern. Regardless of plumage, the upper side as it's banking and the head centered on gravity, pointing or facing straight, the body on the angle, but the head is straight centered on gravity. This is the most aesthetically pleasing of the birds in flight. But also birds hovering, like any of the terns. This common tern here, as it's hovering, it's stationary, so it's easy to focus. And once you're confident that your focus is 100%, then blast a series of images using your burst mode. So 4 or 5 frames in consecutive order very quickly, and you'll get many good compositions as a result. For me personally, with the wings held back of a hovering bird, this is the most aesthetically pleasing of all the possible compositional positions. And then when the bird comes down low, get your camera angle low. This way it's easy to blur the background, but also it looks more natural. It has a more natural sense or appeal. Now, some birds behave very normally in close proximity to humans. When you've got tame birds like this, it's easy to get close to them, and better yet, just wait for them to get close to you. And if you can get close to birds, common species like ring-billed gull, get those nice portrait shots and get them nice and sharp, revealing all of the detail. And in breeding plumage, the colors can be quite nice. Look for unusual plumages. Here you have a ring-billed gull with a dark iris, but you can even see a lot of the detail there in the iris of this breeding plumage species, but an unusual variant. At dawn and dusk, sometimes the water can get calm. When you have such situations, look for reflections. Another phenomena that occurs when the sun is low on the horizon is that the blue end of the spectrum is filtered out, and the light has a tendency to show more or to reveal more in the warm end of the color spectrum, in the pinks or the yellows or the oranges. This can work to your advantage. It can have a certain appeal, If you don't like those warm colors, you can remove them to a certain degree in the photo editing process. When the sun is low to the horizon and the sky has an orange cast with birds flying through the frame, if you're exposing for the sky itself, you won't get any detail there in the bird, but this works to your advantage. You get that stark silhouette. So a nice simple photo with the bird flying through the frame and the sun low to the horizon. Now, the region also is good for waterfowl photography. A while back, many trumpeter swans were introduced to the region and now can be photographed in the summer, in migration as well. In the fall and in the winter, where the water is shallower, you can get puddle ducks. Gadwall is fairly consistent in Niagara area. In migration, hooded mergansers can be easily photographed. Again, in the shallower the water, that's a little bit more still. In the faster moving water, sometimes you get birds like king eider showing up in the Niagara region. This juvenile here, or if you're really lucky, maybe you'll get a bonded pair of harlequin ducks and other diving ducks out in the deeper water. Now, the Niagara region has a lot of beauty, a lot of scenery, has many gardens to explore, orchards, and a lot of other natural environments. In the springtime, you get a lot of blooms, and virtually any life form that appears in these trees is worthy of photographing. So this usually occurs in May. Also, quite a few feral pigeons in the regions, along the gorge, in urban environments around the buildings. And of course, feral pigeons will attract predators such as peregrine falcon that do breed down there. Red-tailed hawks are quite common in the region, very common throughout the year. Sometimes can be easily approached and photographed. And a fairly recent phenomenon is that the region has been attracting black vultures with some consistency. And again, like the seabirds, of course, when a raptor banks and with its head centered on gravity, showing you the entire upper side, that's when you want to use that burst mode to get several frames. There's also potential for shorebirds in the region. In the winter, in late fall, sometimes you can get purple sandpiper, usually juvenile plumages, and also phalaropes in the deeper, faster moving water. Red phalarope shows up there, and certainly red-necked phalarope as well. Now I'll just pass this over to Nina, who will talk to you a little bit about ethical wildlife viewing.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. We are getting close to our presentation now, and just a few more minutes here now about ethical wildlife viewing. We humans have wiped out 60% of mammals, birds, fish, and reptiles the last 50 years. North America, birds alone reached a staggering number of 3 billion birds lost since 1970. Here in Canada, more than 1/4 of Canada's bird species are declining, sadly, rapidly. So, think about all of that, and we hobbyists, bird watchers, nature lovers, and wildlife photographers should really be more diligent now than ever. When you travel the world, hopefully you hire qualified and experienced guides. In Antarctica, for example, as you can see here, this image is from the Antarctica. The IATO, which is the International Association of Antarctica Tour Operations, have set strict rules and guidelines as to how to behave when you are with the wildlife in Antarctica. For example, you are not allowed to approach wildlife more than 5 meters, no closer than 5 meters, which is about 15 feet. And as you can see in this image, everything in this image is wrong. It's wrong because the person is way too close to the penguin. And it's also wrong in regards to photography. With a telephoto lens and at that angle, that close to that bird, you're not going to get a lot. However, in Antarctica, the wildlife doesn't read guidelines or rules or laws. So actually, if you sit down, be patient and you wait, wildlife might approach you. My point is, normally there are a set of rules and guidelines out there as to the do's and the don'ts. And even for some reason, if there wasn't any, use common sense and remember that wildlife should always come first. Nesting birds, for example, are extremely sensitive, and just the smallest disturbance can get them to abandon their nest. With the loss of 3 billion birds since 1970 in North America, you should think maybe that, do I really have to go and see that nesting family again? You already saw them once. Do you have to return? Do you have to go there and spend hours and hours at the nesting site? Live baiting of carnivores, like owls for photography, is another troubling side of wildlife watching. Just last year, here in the greater Ottawa area, a northern hawk owl was hit by a car and killed while it was being baited on the road. How can this unethical practice be tolerated? There are no bylaws, unfortunately. But does that mean that we should do it? Personally, I think it's much more pleasing to see a beautiful owl nicely perched in a tree than to see an in-flight shot of an owl being baited. Thank you. That was all from me and Tony today.